Welcome to this week's episode of Are You Brave Enough? Today, we're going to talk with Jessica Dugas, and she has an incredible story to share with us. And are you brave enough to tell your story? Today, please welcome to the show Jessica Dugas. She is an intuitive mentor and inspirational entertainer, international best-selling author, and the creator of the Breakthrough Show Network. Her multi-passionate approach to entrepreneurship brings together coaching skills, endless creativity, authentic intuition, a sense of humor, and entertaining on-screen presence, which results in a unique and transformative experience for her clients and fans alike. Jessica is a devoted wife and homeschooling mom of 6 beautiful children, and she enjoys many hobbies, including anything to do with music, plant-based cooking, gaming with her family, and breathing in the salty sea air by the Connecticut shoreline. And we found out very early on that I actually used to live where you are living now. So that was really cool that we have that in common. And I loved our original conversation. And you have so many fascinating stories to tell based on the conversation. But I know you wanted to start with maybe talking about your brother, which is
Mm.
not necessarily a fun story, but certainly obviously one that's been really transformational for you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. By the way, really appreciate you also creating the space for others to share their story as well, which, as you know, I think that's so important. I think I've always sort of been interested in storytelling. I hung out at the library a lot as a kid. And when to kind of go into your question about the end of 2009, we found out that my brother at the time, who was 24 years old, so 4 years younger than me at the time, had a stage 4 cancer. And it was very fast moving. We weren't really prepared in any sense of the word. And when everything happened very quickly. It was melanoma that metastasized and went into the lungs and the brain, etc. And in January of 2010, I had received a phone call that my brother had gone into the hospital, into the ICU, and wasn't doing that great. Couple days later, received a second phone call that my grandfather wasn't going to make it through the night at the time. And my grandparents helped to raise me. So that was just a devastating phone call. At the time, we were living in Alabama and they were in Connecticut. So we had made the decision to go ahead and drive up with my brother in the hospital, my grandfather knowing that he wasn't going to make it through the night. We were going to go ahead and drive up. And we got up there. Sure enough, my grandfather had passed while we were driving. And during the process of helping my grandmother plan his funeral, my brother actually ended up passing away 2 hours after my grandfather's funeral. So to tell you that week was just completely, it's wild to think back on it. And part of what continues to blow me away is we wouldn't have been there to spend those last couple of days with my brother had my grandfather not passed literally that week before. And so even in the midst of that grief that I was experiencing, I was so thankful for that opportunity to be able to be there for my brother passing away. But that moment was completely life-changing for me, Karen, because I think anytime we experience loss at a young age, something hits us a little bit differently. And for me, I literally walked in the room just a moment after he took his last breath. And I remember falling to the chair, and a movie reel of sorts was playing through my head. Like, what are you doing with your life? And it was like your mortality hit you really quickly. And
Yeah.
I said, I just, you've got to do something different, Jessica, because at the time I was just going through the motions, not really happy with my life, not really even connected to a sense of purpose at all. And just wearing the mask that I think so many of us wear of like, oh, I'm the perfect mom, perfect wife, everything's great, everything's fine. It's the everything's fine while you're sitting in the wooden chair and the fire's going all around you, sort of thing.
Well, yes, we,
And
we
yeah,
all know that
yeah,
feeling, and I can't even imagine what you went through with that, and have that kind of realization at
yeah,
your age, at that age is, I mean, on one hand, it's incredibly sad, and on the other hand, it's such an incredible opportunity, which obviously you created out of that
right,
situation.
right. Yeah, and it created a space too. I'm glad you used the word created, actually, Karen, because that has been the cornerstone of this platform that I've created for others to tell their story, is that we can take any moment, no matter how painful, no matter how grief stricken, no matter how disappointing, frustrating, anger inducing, and we can take it and we can create something from that. We can have these breakthrough moments, as I call them, and move on to the next thing and up level our lives, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny that you bring that up now because I'm going through something similar right now where having to make a really what could be seen as a devastating decision,
Mm,
but there's something that if you lean into that and you accept it and look for the gift in it,
yeah,
that there are so many more possibilities than we ever give credit to, right? There are so many more
yeah.
opportunities and possibilities, but we tend to see things through just the tunnel of where we are now and what we're holding on to. And when we are forced to let go, like you were forced to let go of both your brother and your grandfather, at the same time, there's something that's really opening about that.
Mm,
There's something that really gives us a moment where we can choose to hold on and stay small or let
mhm.
go and see what opens up for us.
Right, right. When we release, we create space, right? So
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
thinking of that in the physical sense. I have a declutter coach and she always reminds me to, before I bring, lots of new things into the house, to get rid of some stuff first. And it works the same way, I feel like, with these emotional things that we go through. If we release things, we create space for something new and something that's good for us for right now and moving forward as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't get that because we want to hold on to everything and add. And I'm certainly, yes, no, I admit that too. I want to hold on to things and add. And every once in a while, it's like my wardrobe. Every once in a while I go through and I purge it and I clean it out. But most of the time I just keep adding stuff to it until I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, this is too much. I have to do something about it because I don't want to get, oh, but I love this. I might need this, right? I
Yeah,
might need it. But obviously when you lose people, it's a completely different,
yeah.
situation. And I've recently lost both of my parents,
Mm,
and it wasn't at a young age. And so I know it's different than to do it. But I love the way you talk about create, and you've talked
mm,
about how to create out of it. And you've done an amazing job of
mm.
creating out of it. So I want to hear more because we're talking about, are you brave enough to share your story? And I think that was the moment, right? When you decided that I need to share my story
Yeah.
and I need to help other people share their stories, right? So tell us about how that all came about.
When it was my brother passed in 2010, and then from between 2010 and 2016 I was just, after that fall down moment, I was really on a journey of self-discovery. What does spirituality mean to me? What does my mental health look like? How do I start dusting away the cobwebs on a lot of these physical things that I had been experiencing since the time I was a child, dealing with chronic pain and chronic illness from the time I was very little? And so there was a lot of things that I started to chip away at, which was was a little bit overwhelming. But it served my sort of ADD nature well to bounce from thing to thing, if you will. But so I was really working on myself, and people started to notice, and they would ask me, Jessica, I don't know how you do it. How do you have so many children and are not pulling your hair out homeschooling? How are you staying organized? How are you doing all of this stuff? And I started helping people out, mentoring, coaching a little bit, and sharing some of the tools and techniques that I was using to better my life. And in end of 2016, beginning of 2017, I had the opportunity to write in a compilation of stories called Shine. And I made the decision to share about the moment that my brother passed away so that I could share what you and I just talked about the ability to take something that is absolutely devastating and use it as a springboard to move your own life forward if you choose to do that. And so I wrote in this story, and I honestly, this was the first time that I had really written anything down that was significant or even that meaningful to me. And it was a very, very healing process for me to go through it, because I'm not sure that in the moment when everything happened that I was really able to process it all. And so the process of writing everything down and then editing it, and you know what that's like, having been through
Yeah,
such.
absolutely. No, there is. You're right. There's something very cathartic about
Yeah,
writing it down.
yeah.
And, I've written in a couple of compilations too, and putting your story or part of your story out in
Mm,
something like that, you get clarity on it yourself.
right.
Not only is it cathartic, but you get clarity, and then that allows you to share your story with others in a completely different way.
Right, right. So I had written, it was healing for me in the writing process, but then I also had other people coming to me that had read what I wrote and say, thank you so much for writing this, because it helped me to process what I was dealing with as well. And then for those of us that went through it together, and I'll just say that there was a person who read my writing, who also was close to my brother, my grandfather, that also experienced it with me. And they were so thankful. They came to me afterward and said, I just really appreciate you sharing this, because I was not able to process it at this time, and that this helped me to do that. And I just wanted to say thank you and I love you, etc. And it brought us together as well. So I found that the writing process, the sharing your story, was healing on those three levels. It helped me to heal, it helped others to heal in reading it, and it helped to heal relationships, to bring us together, that we may not have done that had that not happened.
That is so beautiful. And it really does go to show the power of sharing your
Mm,
story. And a lot of times that seems risky. And we talk about, are you brave enough to share your story? But a lot of people hesitate to share their stories. Well, my story is not important enough. My story isn't going to have enough of an impact. It's not that interesting.
mm,
We have all these reasons why we don't share our stories, and not every story is meant for public consumption.
right,
Let's face it, we have to be discerning about that.
right.
But when you're brave enough to share some pivotal stories like you did, that can make such a huge impact on other people's lives. And that's what it's all about, right? I mean, at the end of the day,
Mm,
that's what we're here to do, is to make an impact on other people's lives in one way or another. And we want to help people move forward ourselves, and we want to help other people move forward. And I know that's what
right.
I want to do, and I know that's what you're all about too. And
Yeah,
sharing our stories is such an important part of that. So tell
absolutely.
us what's happened now since you shared that story. I love that.
Well, I mean, I didn't really have a plan, being honest with you. I got a little, deep down the rabbit hole as I was preparing to come on your show, actually, because I love, as a homeschooling mom, dictionary.com is my friend. I love dictionary and thesaurus.com. They're my two favorite
Me too,
websites
me
on the
too, me
planet.
too.
Hello.
Me too.
Um,
As a writer, I love those. I use them all the time.
so I was thinking about the word risk, before I came on here. And I was like, what's the difference between taking a risk and taking a chance? Is there a different difference? And because I feel like for me, I felt like I had taken a lot of chances, but I'm not really sure if I've ever really used that word risk for myself. And so I literally went down the whole rabbit hole about these two words. And I feel like when after I finished writing the story, I didn't have a plan. Like I said, I was doing some coaching and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I realized that I had to continue in some way to share stories to something. I didn't know what that was going to look like. And I spent a couple hours on the phone with a friend of mine, and we were in one of those rabbit hole conversations, and we're really diving deep into personal and spiritual development topics. And when we finished this like 3.5 hour conversation, I said, God, I really wish that we would have recorded that, because so many people could have benefited from these stories that we were telling and this information that we were sharing with each other. And I said, we actually could probably do that. We could probably continue to have these conversations and tell stories, and but this time record it and see what happens. And that's how the Breakthrough Show was born, which is the first talk show that the first serious one that I had started. And I was interested in just sharing stories, but also I learned through the writing process that that's not something I want to do all the time. So, but I love,
Unlike me who loves to write. So
I enjoyed writing. I enjoy writing to the point where I'm actually writing a couple other books right now, but not as much as I enjoy the ability to entertain people and also teach lessons through that entertainment. Also be able to take people to those breakthrough moments through entertaining and laughing and sharing stories and having fun. And so from that point, I started the show, and at the end of the season, or the number of shows we had planned, I said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do now. And somehow the show became a network of shows with other hosts and other shows, and because it became so important to me, and I saw now not just me sharing my story but others sharing the story, and then all of that networking and relationship building and all of that happens because of it, and bringing us closer together, which I think is a much nicer thought than the division that so many of us are experiencing in the world right now.
oh my goodness. Well, amen to that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that you took one conversation and built kind of a whole career and business around it. And that's so beautiful, because I love the idea of telling stories that both entertain and teach lessons, which is why I write fiction instead of nonfiction.
Right.
My solo books are fiction, because I love bringing in, like you're doing in a different way, but you're going at it from a different angle, but bringing in different people's perspectives,
Mm,
different viewpoints, different people's take on the story. And that's what you can do when you're writing fiction, right? I can bring in,
right.
this person's point of view and that person's point of view, and you can build a whole system of understanding things versus just telling you one point of view. And you're doing the same thing through the conversations that you're
Right.
having,
Right.
which I just love that.
I appreciate that. And speaking of taking risks, it was risky for me to do this, and I realized that in that rabbit hole I went down in for preparation for the show today, because I don't have a formal education. I never worked in corporate. I was with a bunch of kids at home. I had a love for entertainment. I had been on the stage as a kid singing and acting and things like that, and going into teenager and early adult years, but I never, I didn't know how to work the technology, or any formal training of any means of anything. And I certainly didn't know how to be an entrepreneur. And I'm still secret secret. I'm still learning that today.
Hey, we're all still learning that.
But it's
Secret,
risky.
you're
It's
not
risky.
alone. We all are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's risky to start a business when you have no idea what you're doing and nothing to really back it up. I find myself often in a very different place in the entrepreneur world than many other people that are in it, because they might have the education, they might have the knowledge, they might have the training, they might have the experience or something else. But I'll go ahead and say I stand behind the fact that I have good stories and I know how to tell good stories, and the rest will fall into place.
I agree with you 100% because the stories are really what create relationships. To your
Mm,
point, stories are what create relationships between people. And when you're creating relationships with people, you build a business, you build a life. And that's why stories are so powerful and
yeah.
I love them. So I don't think it has as much to do with education or any of the accreditations
Yeah.
that people talk about as much as it is the ability to connect with others and to share stories and to really be heart-centered with people and be real and authentic, which obviously
Yes.
you are. And that's why it's so powerful to tell the story when you're not just telling a fake story
Mm,
like you were before your brother died, but
yeah.
you're telling an authentic story, and that
Right.
changes everything as well. So I love that you dug into what risk is and chance. And I always define risk. This is how I define risk for people is risk is doing something that is pretty far outside of your comfort zone, not
Yeah.
just one step out of your comfort zone, but a significant step out of your comfort zone, learning something new, doing something you've never done before,
Mm,
and expanding your world. And a lot of women talk about risk as negative, and that's why I specifically talk about risk for women, because women look at say, well, risk, and they think of reckless instead of
mm,
risky,
right.
meaning you do crazy things. Well, risky is riding motorcycles. Risky is turning airplanes upside down, which is what I used to do, and I will admit that that bordered on reckless. I wasn't reckless with it, but it bordered on reckless. But risky is starting a business. Risky is writing a
Yeah.
book. Risky is taking a big step to really fulfill your dreams and connect with your heart's desires. And that's what you've done. So
Mm,
you have been brave enough to tell your story and are making the world a better place for it. And I thank you for that.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Karen.
So, one more thing before we wrap things up. And I know you also offer the opportunity for other people to create their own shows and tell their own stories. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about that before we wrap things up?
Sure. So I made the decision to start working with people and creating their own shows because there are a lot of people who have a more than one episode message that they'd like to share, or people like me who are just fascinated by other people and want to interview other people or talk to other people as part of the platform that they're doing. And it became such a great way of me doing my show to also get out there some of the other things that I do. I'm a Reiki master and author, like I mentioned. And so through having my shows, it became a great platform to share about some of the other work that I do as well. So I realized what an absolute gem that is for people that are entrepreneurs as well. So I started working with entrepreneurs who had a passion for entertaining, being funny, sharing their story, things like that, interviewing other people and starting their shows. And we kind of work from the ground up. And creating what they want their show to look like. And we do meetings once a month for our hosts and really share tips, tricks, and techniques of being a great host, among other things. And then also working with people who have established shows to just bring them into a network environment so they don't have to do everything alone, because it's so much nicer to just team up and be able to bounce ideas off of other people and not have to be a solopreneur, all the time and get some of that feedback as well. So I really been enjoying doing that in my work too.
Awesome. And we are going to put the link to set up a free call for people to explore whether or not they want to create a show with you. So we'll put that in the show notes. And we are so happy to have you here today, Jessica. I really loved our conversation. I could talk to you forever, but we'll wrap things up for today.
Thank you
And
so much, Karen. I
and
appreciate
I
you.
I appreciate you too. So thank you for joining us for another episode of Are You Brave Enough? And don't forget to join the wait list for the next book in my series, Pursuing Truth, coming out on September 28th. Until next week, be brave. Loving this content? Are you brave enough to hit subscribe? I dare you to hit subscribe. Don't miss a single episode of Are You Brave Enough?